5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Puck short.
Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new episode of the One Puck Short podcast. As always, I'm your host Rob McGregor, and today we're going to be focusing on the Columbus Blue Jackets, a team that I maybe have underappreciated, I don't know if that's the right word, or certainly undercovered. I may have made that word up as well during my time on the One Puck Short podcast, but hoping to crack that today. They obviously went through a lot of changes over the summer, maybe haven't made the best start to this season. Joining me to break down all things Blue Jackets today, writer for The Athletic in Ohio. Please welcome to the show, Alison Lukan. Alison, hi, how are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be part of the show. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for taking the time out to join me. I kind of, as I mentioned off the top there, a lot of changes in Columbus over the summer. I feel like we kind of have to touch on that to start with, because they went all in at the end of last season. They held on to Bobrovsky and Panarin. They brought in Duchesne, Dzingel, Keith Kincaid and Adam McQuaid were brought in as well. Lots of action at the trade deadline. Did okay. Got through to the second round of the playoffs. They swept the Lightning in the process as well, who were pretty much the red-hot favourites maybe to win the Cup, I think, last year. But the Blue Jackets knocked them off in 4. And then those guys, they basically all left. Mark Letestu left. I know he didn't play a whole lot last year, but huge changes. Gustav Nyquist came in, but I mean, what did that kind of upheaval, do you think, do to the roster, do to the team on the ice from one season to the next?
Yeah, and I agree with even your comment that the Jackets are undercovered, I think, and they come by that honestly. This isn't a organization that historically made a lot of noise until recent history. And then they had the big splashy finish, like you said, in terms of the playoffs. And then the narrative everyone had was the players who left. And I certainly don't want to discount those players. They are supremely talented, particularly, obviously, Panarin and Bobrovsky and Duchesne. But this is also a team that's very interesting this year because they kept a lot of their core that it has talent in their own right. I think of players like Cam Atkinson and Pierre-Luc Dubois. The back end has historically been a place of strength with players like Seth Jones and Zach Werenski. But there's no question that they've had to adapt to losing a 2-time Vezina winning goaltender, and then also a guy who comes close to 100 points season in and season out. So they have strength. When they are operating from their strengths and playing the way that they need to play, they've actually showed that they can be a competitive squad this year. But early on, they've had some struggles there with that consistency, and I think that's what they're battling through right now.
Yeah, I mean, is there an adjustment period as well? I mean, we mentioned obviously Panarin was a 100-point guy, but the offense maybe hasn't quite adapted to not having that elite level star around there. They're towards the bottom of the NHL in goals for and goals for per game. And the power play's been a little bit mediocre, and the penalty kill's not been great either, to be fair. Yeah. And they're doing okay in shots per game, so they're getting shots away, but there's maybe not converting. And is that because of the changes, because they've gone from having at least one elite guy and now having to rejumble their lines? Cam Atkinson hasn't scored a goal at 5v5 yet, whereas previously, I mean, he had 40 goals last year. He's been good for 20 or 30 goals in past seasons. Is it just jumbled things so far and they haven't yet quite caught up with themselves and what their best lineup is, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, it would be foolish for me to say that Panarin not in the lineup makes a difference. I mean, of course he makes a difference. But, what has, and I don't know if it's nerves. I don't know if it's, I mean, this was a group that, quite honestly, by the time the season started, got to a point, even up into the team's management, they were sick of talking about the players who had left. And I get that. And they really wanted to prove who they were, regardless of those players who had been here. And who's to say if that is factoring into this? But it is exactly what you said. They are not finishing. They're doing quite well relative to the league. They're at least in the middle of the pack in terms of shot quality, but they're just not finishing. Cam Atkinson is the prime example, as you said. And even when you look at line combinations that never really had Artemi Panarin, so therefore they should still be close to what we would expect from them in terms of year-over-year performance, they are underperforming too. So I think Panarin's loss does impact some guys. I think it's underperformance elsewhere. They have one of the worst shooting percentages in the league. And you mentioned special teams. Special teams has kind of been a blessing and a curse for this group for so long. The penalty kill was an area of strength. They've been, to your point, mediocre this season. That's uncharacteristic of them. And again, uncharacteristic because there's no change on that other than the goaltender. And this isn't about goals being let in behind a superior penalty kill in terms of what's happening. So they need to step it up. And the power play, my goodness gracious, poor Blue Jackets fans. They've put up with this for almost 2.5 years now. And I really don't know what it's going to take to get them out of that funk. It was bad even when Panarin was here. But again, to this bigger theme, when you lose talent like that, you need even more from all of the margins, and special teams is part of that. And when both sides are faltering, that obviously adds to the burden of what they have to do on the ice.
You mentioned Pierre-Luc Dubois there. He's an RFA next summer. He currently leads the team in goals and points with 6 and 10 respectively, the third overall pick in 2016. He had a good couple of years, 20 goals in both his rookie and sophomore season, 61 points last year. I mean, is this his team now? Is he the guy among the forwards, do you think?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know that he's the guy. I do think Cam Atkinson is where the offense will ultimately run through. I mean, you already outlined all of the stats I would share as well. And I mean, right now he's on a 15-goal pace. That's not realistic for this player and who he is. So I think that he's going to rebound. But Dubois is such an interesting piece of the puzzle. He's maybe not the guy, but I think he is proving he is one of the guys. And what's really interesting about him, as much as we talk about the fact that the players who left impacts things, Pierre-Luc Dubois is the only player in the NHL who ever played only with Artemi Panarin on his left side. This is his third year, his first 2 years in the league. He centered the line that Panarin was on. And so to see him step up like he is, and it's not just that he's leading the team in points and goals, the way he is playing right now is so authoritative and with such control. To see his game elevate in light of all the things that we've talked about that are changing on this team, I think says a lot about the kind of player that he potentially is going to become.
There were two other forwards who are heading for restricted free agency, as well as Dubois, that caught my eye for slightly different reasons, perhaps. The first one was Josh Anderson, who had, should we call it, a career year last year.
Yes,
he had 27 goals and 47 points. He's quite a big body. He's almost sort of, in a way, an old-fashioned power forward, I guess. He's got that element to his game. He's maybe not, again, had the strongest start to this season, but is he someone that could be a competent or very useful top six player maybe for the Blue Jackets over the course of the next few seasons?
You should cover this team. You're finding all the gems about it. Yes. Josh Anderson he hates this comparison, but he is very much in the Tom Wilson vein, if I may say, without maybe some of the dirty hits. But yes, he is a special player. He is a very special player to this group. He is huge, he is fast, and he is offensive. So you do get that kind of old school physicality, but also with the new school skill and speed. He has been hampered by an injury early in this season. It's something that maybe lingered over from the playoffs last year. He hurt his shoulder. And we haven't, again, the theme keeps repeating itself. We have not yet seen him play like we know he's capable of. Not even elevate, just play like we know he's capable of. So if he can rediscover those elements that make him so special, the team is better off. And he really is just, John Tortorella is very open about that, is that Josh Anderson is such a special and important part. He plays in all situations, both special teams. So for him to get his game going is imperative.
I mentioned there was a second RFA forward that caught my eye. This is one that I'm maybe missing something on. It's Sonny Milano. Yeah. He was a 16th overall pick in 2014. He played 55 NHL games during the 2017-18 season, scored 14 goals and 22 points, which is a reasonable return. He only played 8 games last year. Then this year he's come back. He's got 3 goals and 6 points in 13 so far. I mean, is he someone who's just been a bit of an enigma? Has there been some injury history here? Is there something I'm missing with Sonny Milano is what I'm asking.
if any, yes. But if any of us could really pinpoint it, I think that we would all be better off. He's obviously an offensive talent. And for that reason, the Blue Jackets really need him for the goal scoring. But it's just been his play away from the puck and also his decision making with the puck. As Tortorella has told us, this is a player that needs to learn that he doesn't always have to drive to the net. Sometimes it's better to pass or to dish off the puck and play another day. He's looked a little better there, but there's also just some contextual awareness that he needs to develop. A great example is, he comes in to the Carolina game, takes an offensive zone penalty that Carolina ends up scoring on, and then he himself scores a goal, and the Jackets end up winning the game. He took 2 offensive zone penalties in what ended up being an overtime loss in St. Louis, where the Blue Jackets built up a 3-1 lead, but then go down 4-3 in overtime. He has a goal in that game too. So it's a little bit of he giveth, but he taketh away with him. The coaches believe in him. They want him to put it together. Last year, he didn't see much NHL time because he also dealt with some injuries while he was in the AHL. But they need him to figure it out. And he needs to figure it out for all the pieces to come together. Again, a huge offensive talent, but the rest of his game just needs rounding out.
I'm going to use the pending RFA thing as a kind of a hinge or a pivot or whatever the right word is, because the Blue Jackets have used 2 goaltenders this year. They've just called up a third who's also going to be an RFA, so they've got 3 pending restricted free agent goaltenders. Joonas Korpisalo, Elvis Merzlikins, who's been demoted to Cleveland at the AHL, and they've just called up Matis, here we go, this is going to test my pronunciation, Matis Kivlenieks.
Almost perfect, Matis Kivlenieks.
There we go. So he's been called up to back up Joonas Korpisalo against Arizona tonight. We're speaking on the Thursdays, they play the Coyotes tonight. It felt like in the wake of Sergei Bobrovsky leaving that the Blue Jackets were trying to give Korpisalo and Merzlikins every opportunity to try and seize either the number 1 role or make themselves a good 1A, 1B tandem like we've seen in a couple of other places like Edmonton maybe early this year and the Islanders. But so far neither has really been able to properly nail down a place. Korpisalo has had the bulk of games. He's played 12 with a .892 save percentage in all situations. Merzlikins struggled. He's played 5 games, .882. His debut was horrible, I think it'd be fair to say.
Yes.
He came in with quite a big reputation from his time in Lugano in Switzerland. I mean, these guys are, as we talked about with the offense, not quite there yet. So much hinges on these guys. So they're relying on these guys to keep them competitive. And so far, they've maybe struggled a bit in net.
Yeah, and it's been unfortunate. A game that I would argue is one of, if not the best performance by Korpisalo, which was the last game in Columbus against Vegas. Korpisalo plays quite strong, and the team has chance after chance after chance and can't finish and ends up losing 2-1. So that's a little bit of the way the luck is falling for this group as a whole right now. But yes, you've outlined exactly what's going on here in that there was intended to be kind of a battle for the number 1 spot, and you touched on the contract status. There's been supposition by some that, after this season, if one is able to emerge, that means perhaps another is the trade piece to build up the rest of the roster. But I'm with you. I kind of wonder if ultimately this isn't a 1A, 1B situation, even going into next year. Everyone I speak to about Elvis Merzlikins is so high on his talent and his ability to eventually translate that to the North American game. The trick for him is that he didn't play a single second in North America until the prospect tournament that he played for the Blue Jackets in September. He elected not to play for the AHL when his season in Switzerland was over last year. So there's been a lot of adaptation in that. And to his credit, he has been very open about what he needs to do. When you look at his stats, and you mentioned that start was abjectly terrible for the entire team. But when you let in 7 goals and you only have 4 games played, it's actually 3.5. He came in relief in one of those. That's going to skew a lot of your stats. He's played well and has continued to improve in his limited starts. But it is about earning the trust of your coaches so that you get in the lineup. And so this move this week, HL, I truly believe is about just getting him playing time. He wasn't playing. I thought he might get a game. They're on a 3-game road trip right now. I thought he might get one of the games, but if they've decided to send him to the AHL to give him some more playing time, great. I don't expect Matis Kivlenieks to see playing time on this trip unless there's an injury. So yeah, it's an area they have to sort out. There's a lot of talent, particularly with Merzlikins, and both Merzlikins and Korpisalo have looked better and better as they've played more. But just as you said, with the way this team has to play, they're going to have to find a way to steal even a couple games in net this season. And right now, it's just not there yet. That doesn't mean it won't be, but it's just not there yet.
I mean, do you see the Blue Jackets trying to bring both Korpisalo and Merzlikins back? There are slim pickings, shall we say, in the free agent field for goaltenders. Braden Holtby is the big name. You would think Washington would want to bring him back, but outside of that, Corey Crawford's sort of on the downslide of his career. He is experienced. Robin Lehner, again, I mean, Lehner's started brightly with the Blackhawks. Maybe the Blue Jackets are finally the team to give him more than a one-year deal, but it's slim pickings. So is there a plan B amongst the free agent class for the Blue Jackets, or are they hoping these guys figure it out as the season goes on and they can move forward with them properly?
Yeah, it is so early to answer the question, and the benefit that the Blue Jackets have is they have a ton of cap space. So, perhaps of those you mentioned, if this thing all falls through the floor, maybe the Jackets are the team to give Robin Lehner a chance. If he can do it again this year, after everyone thought last year was kind of the anomaly, maybe he does earn a couple more years from a team. Who's to say? But if we ask these questions now, the organization is, of course, going to say it's too early. It's too early. I think it depends how these guys play out. If they can both emerge as strong, like I said, for cost reasons, because these are both young guys on smaller contracts, even to sign them both would be affordable and allow you to keep talent in two goaltenders, not necessarily the historical starter backup role we've seen, at least even for maybe 1 year. I don't know that they have to go out and get a big name per se in terms of free agency or trade, but if this thing all goes south, they're going to have to. They're just going to have to.
You mentioned the defence earlier being an area of strength traditionally. Obviously, Seth Jones is kind of the linchpin of that. He's only 25. He's got a lot of time still left on the clock there. Zach Werenski's emerged nicely. David Savard has become, I think, at least a competent NHL defenseman. But one guy who can't seem to catch a break is Ryan Murray. He's sidelined again through injury. I mean, he was the second overall pick in 2012. He made his NHL debut in 2013. But so far, he's only managed to play an 82-game season, or 182-game season. That was 2015-16. And he's had various injuries along the way. And he's not missing like one or two games. He's missing blocks of 10 or 20. And he's out again. And, he's got another year after this season on his contract. But is there frustration that he can't stay healthy? Is it just bad luck to this point in his career? What's the deal with Ryan Murray?
It's such a shame because when he is healthy and playing his game, he is so talented. I mean, that number 2 overall pick, he comes by that deservedly. But to answer your question, it's a little bit of luck and a little bit of concern. For example, his first injury coming out of his draft year was a shoulder. Then he comes into the NHL. He deals with 2 knee injuries. Then he comes back. Then he breaks a hand in his first game back. Then last year he starts dealing with some back issues. Then he comes back this season, and the injury that has him out now is another broken hand. So, some of these things are things that do raise the red flag. Some of these are just in the wrong place, the wrong time. And I think it's hard. It's hard for the organization because they know what he can be when he's healthy. And even before the season started, he was a candidate for me for a load management strategy. Maybe don't expect him to play 82 games a year. Let him play 65 and be ready for a postseason if that's the goal, because he's so valuable. But when you have something like a broken hand, I mean, that goes out the window. So, it's just a great guy, a tremendous player. He just, unfortunately, like you said, it's so hard for him to finish a complete season.
There was a phrase in there I liked, if that's the goal. Now, what is the goal of the Columbus Blue Jackets this season? They're currently 5 points out of a playoff spot, not insurmountable. And of course, any team who are towards the bottom of the standings right now will point to the St. Louis Blues' success last season. I can understand why. I think at some point some general manager is going to make a horrible decision about his team because he thinks they're the new Blues, and I'm going to laugh. But that's beside the point. It's still early days. As you say, there's 5 points, it's 3 wins. They've got a few teams to leapfrog. Several of them are divisional rivals, so it can quickly turn around. But what is the goal of the Blue Jackets this season? Is it just to see where they go until, call it January, and then assess? Is it to try and make the playoffs again? Or is it to look at what is quite a deep draft in 2020?
Yeah, I think the goal is as it should be, which is to make the playoffs again. I mentioned at the start how early on this organization couldn't find a lot of success. They're coming off a 3-year consecutive run into the postseason. That's huge for this club in terms of where they've come from and where they want to go. And as I mentioned, this is a group that says, yes, we lost talent, but look at how much talent is still here. And I think it would be almost insulting to say that if you look at what this group is, that they can't make the playoffs. In fact, I did think, and I still think they can, if they get their act together, be a team that's in the hunt down the stretch. And I think that they could earn that. I think they are able to put together that kind of performance. And Jarmo Kekalainen has shown us that if this group is close, if this group is in the hunt, he is going to be active at the trade deadline to give this team additional assets to try and push even harder. But right now they're just in this funk of not playing up to their potential. And of course, if they can't stay close, then I think, it has the risk of becoming a harder season to last through. They want to make the playoffs. They should be in that conversation. But as with any team, it's up to them on the ice to prove that right. I don't think right now, at least, that there's any other goal in mind.
I mean, is there a fan expectation that they do it as well? Because, this is going back several years. I thought that the Blue Jackets fan base was perhaps one of the most put upon in sport, because they consistently sort of turned out to support the team. But I think at the time, maybe they'd only played the one playoff series in 2009. Maybe they'd been in the second one with the Penguins in 2014. But they hadn't had a lot of success to fall back on. As their first playoff appearance, they were swept by the Red Wings, who went to the final that year. But people kept turning out and supporting this team. As you mentioned, they've made the playoffs for the last 3 seasons. 4 out of the last 6. Is there an expectation now that this is or should be a playoff team, or at least on the bubble and challenging for a wild card spot every season?
Yeah, I think there is, and it's funny because I agree. These fans, God bless them, the ones who've been around since the beginning, there's been a lot to put up with. And what I think is interesting that we're seeing now is because of the success, as with any organization, there's a lot of new fans. There's a lot of fans who don't remember those tougher days, right? They don't remember the struggles. And so for them, any kind of struggle is foreign and perhaps harder to accept. Not that one should accept it, but harder to deal with, if you will. So there's that segment of the fan base where it's a lot of wonderful new fans who are just like, what is this? I expect more from my team. And those are also the ones who, and I get this. This is why fan is a derivative of fanatic. What everyone said about Bobrovsky and Panarin leaving is true. We suck. This kind of thing. But I think there are also then those diehard fans who definitely do expect from this team and will stick by them no matter what. But they might be a little more level-headed about what's going on. But of course, this fan base does not want to view, nor do I think they do view this year as an exception, as a one-off, as a lost season, as a tanking season by any means. They want the playoffs again too. And I think that at their core, they believe that this group can do that.
There's one last subject I wanted to ask you about, Alison. Now, I think I'm correct that the only jersey retirement is the league-wide one, the Gretzky 99. Other than that, the Jackets have retired 0 numbers so far. They've just honoured the Gretzky thing. Correct. So you can probably predict which name I'm going to bring up here. Are they going to retire Rick Nash's number at some point?
It's a good question. I think they will. To answer the question, yes. Particularly because he is now back with the organization working in the front office. And he has since come out and disclosed that going into last season, after he finished the year prior with Boston, that he had conversations with the Blue Jackets about returning and finishing his career in a Blue Jackets jersey. It's just that his concussions were not getting better, and for his health, and rightly so, he needed to step away from the game permanently. So I think that time has healed that wound, and he has definitely put forth the effort to kind of close back relationships with fans. And again, I talk about that segmentation of the fan base. There are a lot of people who weren't here for the drama of his trade request and that kind of thing. And he was a great player. His name is still all over this organization's record books, which is even more impressive when you look at the quality of some of the teams he was playing on. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to watch because he is in the front office right now. Does that affect the timing at all? But his number will be up there for sure someday.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the record book. He played 674 games for the club, 289 goals, 547 points. He's the franchise leader in all three, and they're probably, for an outskater, they're the three records that most people will want or respect, or however you want to term it. He shared the Rocket Richard with Jerome again, if I can trip over my words, and Ilya Kovalchuk in 2004. I mean, is there, as you mentioned, there was that drama about the trade request, the point where, and maybe people can understand this in retrospect, he became frustrated with the lack of playoff success, especially as he had tasted some success internationally. So he'd won things. He just hadn't won them in Columbus. But, I mean, can you summarise what Rick Nash meant to the franchise during... I mean, he was the first overall pick in 2002. He was basically a star in Ohio, or certainly for the Blue Jackets, pretty much from that day onwards until he left for New York. Can you kind of summarise what he meant to the franchise as maybe their first star?
Yeah, I agree. I think he was their first star, and I think he had the personality that fit this community too. Just kind, not brash, a hardworking guy. He fit the identity of the team. He was very, very close with John McConnell, the gentleman who founded the team, brought the organization to Columbus. It was the year he passed that they finally made the playoffs. He just connected so well with the organization. Even after he left in the trade, Rick Nash always had a house here, came back here. As I mentioned, he's obviously settled here because he's working with the team. You still see 61 jerseys. You still see children in house leagues wearing 61. You hear stories of children who were named Nash after him while he was here. He really is going to go down, I think, as one of the pivotal foundational players of this organization, even if people with more success come after him. Because of what he means to the history, he will always be front and center in Columbus and for those who follow the team.
Alison, thank you very much for your time today. I mentioned off the top, obviously, you're with The Athletic. Where else can people find you online, and is there anything you want to plug before we go?
Well, this was certainly a pleasure. I loved talking with you. Always happy to talk about our Blue Jackets. And in addition to The Athletic, I am on Twitter at Alison L, and pretty much anything I'm doing you can find right there online in that feed.
Perfect. Alison, thank you very much. I hope the Blue Jackets win in Arizona and treat you tonight.
Well, thank you so much, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.